Hi, welcome to another episode of Losing Faith, Finding Spirit. Today I'm going to talk a lot about the losing faith side of things, specifically the hypocrisy of the evangelical Christian church of the southern United States of America, which is what I grew up in. I want to talk a little bit about how the church kind of supports toxic narcissistic personalities and other things, how it kind of makes it a hotbed for these kinds of personalities and these kinds of people who are kind of abusive. My experience with the evangelical Christian church might be different from yours, again, because all churches are different, groups of people are different. That's okay. This is my story. And I want to talk a little bit about how it feels when you lose that identity of being a, quote, Christian, and how that kind of affects me. It affected me as a person, and how it might also affect you, just so you can feel less alone if this is part of your story, if this is something you've experienced, leaving a religious organization because of the hypocrisy that you saw, and sort of finding and redefining what your spiritual life means to you and all of that. So that's what this little bit of an episode I hope to kind of cover. Growing up in the evangelical Christian church, it is based on fear. As much as the church will say God is love, and that's the part that I actually resonated with the most. God is love, God forgives, give your heart to God and trust Jesus, and they'll show you the way to get to heaven. But if you don't accept Jesus into your heart, which is kind of a whole interesting concept in and of itself, and you don't claim his name and his identity as a Christian, you are going to forever burn in the lake of fire. Literal fire that never burns out, and you burn and burn and burn and burn. And there's levels and torments and all this stuff. And this is what the evangelical Christian church teaches. In fact, it's such a part of that doctrine of the teaching that around Halloween, they used to have something called hell houses, where you would go and watch like a huge performance, or even kind of like a haunted house where you walk through. And it shows all these very graphic ways that you could die, different ways that people could die, and then people going to heaven or people going to hell. And in those moments, the angels would come and sing, and the lights would be beautiful, and they'd hug Jesus, and he'd take them away. But if you were going to hell, there'd be these hideous demons that come out, and it's fire and roar, and the Satan comes, and it's like flames, and he's like, rah, and you're screaming, and they're being pulled, and they're screaming, and oh my gosh. So imagine like, a haunted house at Halloween, but trying to use people's deaths. So death was always the message of the evangelical Christian church that I grew up in. So it's not just the fear of dying unexpectedly. It's the fear of what happens after you die, what happens to your soul, that part of you that is a lot like the emotions, the mental, all of that part of you, your personality, all of that is the soul. And where it goes after death. The evangelical Christian church believes that your body is just a vessel that you're living in while you're on earth, and that you're supposed to do these things and teach this message and spread the gospel, the good news of Jesus. Which the good news of Jesus is that if you pray a prayer, you say a certain incantation, if you will, you say a certain message of words and say, Jesus, come into my heart and forgive me for all my sins. Suddenly you're magically absolved of all horrible things that you've committed in this life, in this mortal life, and your eternal soul, the soul that goes on forever and ever and ever, goes to heaven. It doesn't matter what you did. It doesn't matter who you were. It doesn't matter, you could have been a serial killer. You could have been, horrible, the most evil, worst thing you can imagine. And if you suddenly say that prayer right before you die, you get to go to heaven forever. But if you don't, and you lived a great life, you were a good person, you did such great deeds, but you never say that prayer, never say those special magic words, that incantation, before death, you go to the hell. You burn forever. Congrats. You've been damned forever. Yeah, it's pretty extreme. And that's what the Christian church, the evangelical Christian church, believes. It's what I grew up in. That message permeates every single service, everything. That whole, like, say the sinner's prayer, raise your hand, you close your eyes at the end of the message, and you know, raise your hand, and you know, say the prayer with me. You have to make a public declaration, blah blah blah. Ridiculous. I can't tell you. Like, so it's brainwashed, it's indoctrinated, it's such a core message that as a very young child, you're terrified of death because you don't know, did I say the prayer? Am I okay? Because it's like a continual thing. Like, you got to keep praying. You got to keep getting clean of your sins. Like, we're all sinners. We've all done wrong. When you're born, you're a sinner. Doesn't matter. And, you know, you got to keep praying. So parents are terrified. My parents specifically, my mother specifically, is terrified for my mortal soul, my immortal soul. She's terrified that I'm going to die and go to hell. Especially because I no longer go to church. Like, they just don't. It's not a one and done thing. It's not like you say the prayer. Unless you're at the end of your life and you're about to die and you happen to say it, then you're good. Doesn't make any sense. When you really think of it, pull it out of that concept that when it was totally brainwashed, when I was in it, when I come out and I've looked at it kind of like from a removed, it doesn't make any sense at all. Like, what? And his message was a lot softer than, you know, stoning people to death. In fact, he was very empathetic. The whole scene of him saying, you know, Jesus, I'm talking about Jesus here, you know, you who have no sin, throw the first stone. Like, you know, everybody sinned. Like, we've all done things, so maybe show a little compassion here. And that was his message. He said true religion is taking care of the widow and the orphan. And that's it. That's religion. Is so taking care. And he said too, like, anyone who does to the least of these, you're doing it to me. So when you give a cup of water to somebody who's thirsty, when you give food to a homeless person, when you give somebody clothes when they don't have clothes, when you walk that extra mile, all of those things that he taught about, you're doing it for God. You're doing it for Jesus. That is the true religion. That is what you're supposed to be doing. That's the message. But Christianity, especially evangelical Christianity, kind of, you know, we've changed that. They changed that whole message, and it's something totally different today. And that happens. That's how religions survive. They have to adapt. But they're adapting in a very strange way, and in a very hypocritical way. My experience, evangelical Christianity really likes to pick and choose what you think. And they really follow Paul more than Jesus. So the teachings of Paul, which fill up most of the New Testament, is what the evangelical Christian church and a lot of the modern Christian churches sort of base their whole belief system on. And that's not even Jesus. Paul never met Jesus in real life. Never met him. In fact, and this is why I think they really like Paul. He was a terrible person. He killed a Christian, and he held everybody's robes while they killed the Christian. But, you know, he was not a great person. And then suddenly he had like this epiphany, if you will. He got struck by something. His eyes went blind, and he had a vision of Jesus coming and basically telling him, like, hey, you got to turn your ways, man. Go and sin no more. Like, change it, buddy. And in his visions, he had other ones. He believed that Romans and the Gentile, those who are not Jewish, could start to be Christians as well. His beliefs were so extreme and so different from what Jesus actually taught when he was alive and walking around, that the apostles, the disciples of Jesus, the people who actually knew Jesus, told Paul, all right, you have to, we can't associate with you anymore. You're going in a different direction. It's not what we believe. We're done. See you later, Paul. Enjoy your life. Like, do your own thing. You go your way, we'll go ours. That's how different his beliefs were compared to theirs. And the church likes to have different messages of how that went down. But if you're interested, Zealot is a very good book that kind of breaks down a historical perspective. I recommend that if you have any kind of Christian religious background, that you really dig into like the historical evidence of things, because there are lots of things out there that help us kind of get a better picture of what really was happening during the days that Jesus was alive and preaching, and before his death, and then afterwards, during when Paul was alive. And then it was like how many years later that the Bible was even written. So most of the stories in the Bible, even the gospel, were written far when everybody was already dead. All the people alive that it's talking about were gone. There's no witnesses in those documents. So it's all second-hand, third-hand, fourth-hand accounts, and really based on the different groups of Christians that were in hiding or running around at that time, their beliefs and what they believed was real. And that's the stuff that kind of got put into the Bible, because it was trying to, when they decided it was time to make the Bible, they said, all right, we got to gather up all the beliefs, and we got to figure out which ones work and which ones don't, which ones are the most popular, which ones aren't, and put those in. Everything else gets thrown. So there's all kinds of other things that didn't make it into the Bible, other beliefs of Jesus, other stories that didn't actually make it into the Bible. So the concept that the Bible is the one and only thing and it's God's word is kind of a bunch of nonsense, because it's actually, first of all, it was written by people regardless. Second of all, it was put together by people far after the fact. And it's been edited and re-edited and changed over all the years, depending on what version of the Bible you pick up. So I don't understand the idea that, this is the word of God. That's it, this book. And I always struggled with that, even within my very zealous life as a Christian. I was very gung-ho, very, very, very passionate about my faith in Jesus and my faith in God. I struggled with the Bible because there were things that contradicted itself within the Bible. The Old Testament teachings are very different from what the New Testament teaches. What Jesus teaches is different from what Paul teaches. And I couldn't understand how to reconcile all those differences. And in myself, because they also were different from what I believed and what I wanted. Corporal punishment, for example, like Christianity is all about, spare the rod, spoil the child. Like you gotta spank your kids. I'm not about that life. We know studies show that's bad. Like it doesn't raise healthy kids. Stoning people. Like, Jesus was like, hey, if let's not do that no more. Turn the other cheek. That's Jesus. So it's so interesting to see that and know the differences. And in my passion, trying to figure out how is this applicable to my life? It doesn't make any sense. You guys keep telling me that I'm supposed to read the Bible every day and it's going to magically show me what to do, but it's not showing me what to do. I can't get out of this depression. I can't get out of this life where I didn't know, but I felt it. Like my life was a mess and I couldn't figure out how to fix it. And they kept saying, just read the Bible, read the Bible. It's going to show you what to do. It did not show me what to do. No, that didn't work. It wasn't helpful. What it did show me, though, again, was the hypocrisy within the church and the hypocrisy within the Bible. And, if the whole thing is supposed to be written by God, then why are you ignoring this Old Testament stuff for the New Testament stuff? Why does it say so many different things? And then I took a class in college, Who Wrote the Bible? And it was the Old Testament specifically, I think from Genesis to Second Kings or Chronicles, one of those. And it was talking about who actually historically wrote the Bible. And my professor was an archaeologist who's actually, her entire career outside of teaching is going on these expeditions to dig up old artifacts in Jerusalem to kind of see about biblical time periods. And the Old Testament is even further back than the New Testament. And so the fact that she had and presented with archaeology evidence was amazing, archaeological evidence. And it blew my mind because I realized that the Bible's just one account of what happened. It's not the account. It's just one account. There are lots of different, versions of the truth. And we don't know because none of us were alive back then. But it really helped open my eyes to where I didn't have to see the Bible as God's word. I could let myself go. I could start listening to messages outside of church, outside of the Bible. I could start listening to things that jived with me, things that, as the law of attraction says, vibe with me. And there were things that just really resonated. I really felt like that was life. I feel more at peace and one with spirit in nature when I'm outside than I do in a church. I always felt suffocated in a church. I was partly because of all the restrictions of the evangelical church and purity culture and all these things, and I never really felt like I could be myself. I literally, visually, when I was in church, standing there, singing the songs, doing the things, I felt like there was a shackle around my neck, chained to the ground, and I had giant wings and I couldn't fly away. That's what I felt. That is the visual that came to me when I was sitting in those churches. That's the feeling that I had. I just wanted to fly away. I wanted to get out, but I was stuck and shackled there. And that's kind of like why, when I finally let go of the Bible, I finally realized that this is just written by a bunch of different people over different periods of time. And after the fact, a lot of the times, a lot of the prophecies were written years after they happened. So it's retroactively written. So of course they're accurate because they're written after the fact. And some of them are very, vague and strange because they're coded for the people of the time. For the Jews who were trying to figure out where to live and how to keep their messages and histories alive without, getting in trouble with whoever was in the law at the time. Learning about other religions, world religions in college was really eye-opening as well, because then I realized that there's not just one religion in the world. There's people who believe all kinds of things, and amazingly, we all kind of believe in doing good to others, being kind to ourselves, and showing love. And that's ultimately where my spiritual path has taken me, is into just a love and light, whatever that means, love and light. And I did feel lost at first when I stopped going to church, when I stopped reading the Bible, because it was such a big part of my foundation. It was a big part of my everyday. But then I just slowly got out of it, and it was healing in a way. Like the truth of all of that kind of helped me find my way out and find my way into myself. And again, because Christianity says that God is bigger, and then under God is the pastor, and then under the pastor, if you're underage, is your parents. And so you, as yourself, as an authority figure, as somebody who knows what's right and wrong for themselves, you're not allowed to listen to yourself. You got to listen to everybody else first. So that is the most debilitating lesson that Christianity taught me, was because I didn't have in tune to my intuition. I wasn't in tune to my knowing. I wasn't in tune with what I needed as a person. And I made choices for everyone else and not for me. And so resentment kind of spread in my life, and bitterness and depression, because I wasn't living for me. I was living for literally everyone else. because that's what they teach. Being a martyr is what's, amazing. So, and women, especially within the church, mothers and wives and women are supposed to put everybody else first. That's the culture. You're supposed to be last. And I'm thankful for the women's movements of today, feminism of today, because otherwise it's soul crushing. Like, where do you live? Do you exist? And I saw my mother, who is codependent, like, not be able to function when her kids all moved out of the house. And I was, that was something else. And I didn't want that for me. And it took me a long time to finally really get in touch with my knowing and really start listening to my inner voice. I'm still learning. The best way that I've been learning how to listen to myself is through meditation, through quiet time, through just tuning in. That prayer, I used to pray every day. And funny enough, praying is very similar to meditation. So if you are of faith, in a different faith than the evangelical Christian church, prayer is very similar to meditation. So if that's something that you do, it's very good for you to continue that with whatever your higher power is. So for me, meditation is where I get that in tune with my higher self, with my inner self, whatever term you want to use. It's how I kind of started to get in touch with myself and being aware and mindful of the things around me and the messages that the universe is sending me. Sometimes when I feel like something's important, I will see it over and over and over again. When I first was thinking about meditation, when I first was like a mother and I didn't know what to do because I felt completely out of control, meditation kept coming up through emails. I'd get emails about meditating. I'd see magazines at the store about meditating. I'd be on a website and there was an article about meditation. And it just kept coming up. And so I kind of was like, all right, I think the universe is trying to tell me to meditate. And then that became part of my practice. And that's been one of the biggest things for me, doing guided meditations, a few minutes, probably about 10 minutes a day. Most days, I don't do it every day, but the days I do, it's very helpful and beneficial, and it's helped me finally get into my body instead of out of my body, because when you've been a survivor of trauma, disassociation is very, very common. And for me, I would literally feel like I was watching things happen from the side, like I was watching myself do things. Like I wasn't in control anymore. My body took over, something else took over. So I stopped doing that through meditation and mindfulness. I started getting in my body. I started allowing myself to feel those uncomfortable feelings, and started, instead of trying to push them away and act like they weren't there, I started trying to speak to those feelings, trying to be like, okay, this is fear. I'm feeling afraid right now. I'm feeling angry. And most of those feelings that I couldn't deal with were fear and anger, because when people were angry, growing up with an alcoholic father and an alcoholic spouse, anger is scary because you don't know. You don't know if they're going to punch the wall. They might punch a hole in the wall, but they might punch a hole in you. Like, you don't know when that violence and that aggression and those yelling and screaming and those really mean, vicious things that they're saying is going to be turned to physical violence against your person. So that fear just kind of takes over. And it took a lot to get out of that, but I am out of it, and he's out of my life. So that fear isn't as strong, but knowing that and paying attention to that in my body helped me start to regulate those emotions. It helped me get through those emotions instead of like flying away and like just checking out. I was able to kind of really get in tune, and that's the first step to really getting to know myself and getting to know the inner knowing and what I like and don't like, what's good for me, what's bad for me, and then moving into healthier patterns and breaking those old systems. And that's really the best thing I can advise to you if you've grown up in any kind of environment that tells you not to listen to yourself and to put others first and to ignore your inner feelings, I want you to stop right now. I want you to pay attention to your own knowings, because you know what's best for you. You do. You come with a package internally. There's instincts that we are born with. There's innate knowings that we have inside of ourselves that will guide us. And I'm not talking Jiminy Cricket style, but it's similar. Like, that is a very important message, is to really get in touch with who you are. And the more you know about yourself, the stronger and more confident you're going to be when people try to tear you down. And the more you'll be able to not let that damage you. And the more you'll be able to heal, because you'll know what works for you. You'll know that maybe guided meditation isn't for you and the quiet, silent meditation is, or maybe journaling is better for you and meditation just doesn't work for you. Whatever it is, we all have different things that work and things that don't, and it's okay. And whatever that means for you, it's just getting in touch with yourself and figuring that out. So I wish you well on your journey. Blessed be, and have a wonderful life. And I hope you tune in next time for more. Bye.